Hello, you two beautiful humans. We've got quite a few registered, so hopefully there'll be lots of you. It's so beautiful to see your faces.
It's good to see you too, Karen.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, I'm just sorting out my camera. I'm so sorry. I've got my wrong camera on. I'm just trying to sort that out. I was
Oh,
deep in
I hate
thought.
that. Yes.
I'm sorry.
No apologies needed. This is fabulous. Hello, Kurt. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Bonnie.
Yay! We've got real life, almost 3D humans. This is fabulous. Oh, here they all come. The background photo I'm using today is called Using Data for Human Connection. So I thought it doesn't get any better than that, really, for a group of researchers, right? So this is us using data for connection. Hello to all of you who are joining. If you can, if you've got the bandwidth, I would love to see your faces as we go. But if you're not in the right space to be able to do that, I completely understand. Welcome to our Q&A session for Explore Your Career Potential. I'm having a blast facilitating this module, this 5-week group. I really hope that you're enjoying it as much as I am. I can tell from the Padlets that we've had up that all of you are engaging beautifully with the content, and it sounds like you're getting a lot of value out of it. I'm hoping that this conversation is really beautiful. I'm here to answer any questions that you have. But I would also love for others to just jump in with their perspectives and potentially their answers as well, because you may know more than I do in one particular field. So feel free to add to each other's conversations. Now, I thought there have been quite a few questions posted on the Q&A board, but if you have a question that you haven't written down, don't be shy, you can still ask here. Anything that I don't get to or doesn't get answered during this session, I'm really happy if you posted it on that board for me to give you a more complete answer, so that no question goes unanswered. I think that's really important. Well, shall we kick off with starting some of the questions? It sounds like we've basically got 3 themes from the Q&A board. The first one is international networking. Hello, Melissa. Then we had a lot of questions on job search, specifically to your fields. So, Kurt, I know that was one of your questions. Kranthi had one of those questions, and I think a couple others. And then Varsha asked an imposter syndrome job search question. So, how would we go about answering some of those? Melissa, shall we start with yours? Because that was kind of in a category all of its own. So you asked for, I need to build international connections. Where do I start?
Yeah, and I saw Karen this morning on your response on the Padlet that you'd put 3 questions to me. And so I probably just want to contextualize why I'm so keen to build overseas connections. And that is with my sort of career goals to sort of work with theatre companies and in an educational context. While in Australia, we have some lovely theatre companies working in an educational context, and I'm sport for choice here in Adelaide. we don't have places like the Royal Shakespeare Company, the National Theatre, the Kennedy Centre in the US. So I'm while the Sydney Opera House has an amazing education department tacked on, it's a performance space, but lots of different things go on in that space. Whereas I'm looking for an established theatre company. And often what we find in Australia is that theatre companies have education coordinators, but they don't have necessarily an education department. And I want to work with a team of people. So that's why I've kind of set my sights overseas, because there are some really lovely established companies that have departments. And that's sort of what I would like to work with a team of people in my work. Yeah.
So what's stopping you finding those contacts?
Well, I went on LinkedIn, actually. I think it was the second week you asked us to go on LinkedIn and look at people's careers, and I found the head of education for the Royal Shakespeare Company, and she'd just been awarded an MBE. So I just felt a little imposter syndrome, a segue to that, if you like. I felt a little intimidated to just go, hi, I'm this person in Adelaide. And so I just did not have the confidence to connect with her at all.
Okay. So, first of all, you are not alone with that imposter syndrome. Who am I to connect with someone like you, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's quite a lot of faces in our little chat room who feel pretty similar. What I would love to encourage you to do, though, is rip off that Band-Aid and do it. So if you're unsure about how specifically to approach them, feel free to use me to experiment and send me the message that you are thinking of posting, and they're going, is that stupid? Do I sound dumb? And I'm going to say no, you know that. But if there are some other things that I can suggest to make that connection as warm as possible, I'll let you know. And then if you've had somebody say, I think that sounds fabulous, go for it. It'll just give you that little endorphin boost to help you press send. As long as you let people know why you're contacting them, there is usually no reluctance unless you are trying to sell them something.
Yeah, right.
That is the only reluctance I have on LinkedIn. And even if I'm suspicious that people are trying to sell me something, I will still log in. I will still connect with them. But if within 30 seconds of me connecting, they launch into their sales spiel, I will probably say thanks, but no thanks. If they try again, I will disconnect with them.
Okay. All right.
So that's my boundary. People have different boundaries on LinkedIn, so everyone is different. But if somebody has just been appointed to a new position, or they've been given an award, or they've posted something on LinkedIn that you want to engage with, there is no better opportunity. What I would suggest is comment on their post about that in the first instance. So like it, send your congratulations. So that they can see that you're engaging in their content before you've even connected with them. That will then help them understand that you have honourable purposes and no sales requirements for connecting on LinkedIn, but then introduce yourself and explain to them why. So the reason that I asked you those three critical questions, I asked Melissa, why do you want them? What different purpose would they serve for you? And where overseas do you want to target? And essentially that was because I don't need to know that answer, but I wanted to make sure that Melissa had thought that through, because something else that you could do on LinkedIn or on other professional networking sites is to send a more specific query out. So we've got some international people studying with us in this program. We've got people from different cultural backgrounds who may already have those connections. But when we ask a really generic question like, who do I connect with? We don't really know how to help you. If you ask really specific targeted questions, you can then post those to your networks and say, does anyone have one connection who could get me started on this trail? So remember, the value of our connections isn't just who they know, but who they also have in their connections who may know somebody. So really, if you're asking for one connection, if you sent out to your network anyone who has access to one connection in a country that I'm interested in for the purpose that I'm looking for, does anyone know anyone? They've got a reason to respond to you. The broader our question, the less likely we are to respond, because we don't really know what context you're after. And without the context or without those specifics, takes us a lot of digging to find that out. So for you, now this is a learning Padlet, and that was what it was for. So I'm here to tell you this is how you could engage. But if you wanted to ask that same question, you're more than welcome to on LinkedIn. I would be answering those 3 additional questions within your post so that people can respond with something that they're pretty sure will be genuinely helpful.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Karen.
Does that help you?
Yes.
Excellent. If anyone else would like to practice with me on LinkedIn for their profile or for their professional engagements, if you'd just like to essentially submit a draft before you reach out to somebody in your network that you don't want to embarrass yourself with. And I'm very confident that you wouldn't. But if you are worried about pressing the send button, then send it to me first, because there's no bridges you can burn with me and there's no silly question with me. If there's some things I can do to coach you into a better question, please feel free to do that. If you haven't found me on LinkedIn, I'm the only Karen Carvey there, so I'm pretty easy to find. And I promise, as long as you're not going to try and sell me something within 30 seconds, I will respond to you. All right, so that's it for international networking. If anyone here does have any theatre contacts in overseas locations, please feel free to send them to Melissa and connect with her on LinkedIn also. Now, we had lots of questions about job search. So there's quite a few questions, and there's a range of different things that I can help you with. To get you started, I've put a flyer together with a whole bunch of website searches for you. So often people, you know how to conduct a job search. You know how to apply for jobs once you're there. If you don't, stay tuned because I can still help you with that. But often the hardest part is, where do I find these jobs? How do I get started? And what jobs am I actually eligible for? So what I thought I would do is I've set up a flyer. Let me see if I can find my flyer. And I will. I have so many windows open. I'll share my screen and then you can see it. Okay. Share my screen. Hopefully I'm sharing the right one. No, that looks... No, you're seeing my assignment there, aren't you? Stop share. Share again. Come on, screen 2. Why is it doing that? Can you see anything there? Can you see a Word document?
Yeah, Karen, what we can see is explore your career potential job search websites for HDRs.
Excellent. I'm looking for the little highlight around my screen and it doesn't have one at home, but that's okay. So here's a few sites for you to start with. So I've broken them down into government roles. Smart Jobs is the Queensland site. So for all Queensland, so state government roles, that only applies if you're in Queensland, of course. Jobsearch.gov is for, I'll try and make that a little bit bigger for you too, if you're like me and can only see things that are directly in front of you. Jobsearch.gov is for federal Australian jobs. And then Randstad is a recruiting company that you may not be used to dealing with in terms of recruiters, but they have dibs on most of the more incredible government roles that are available. So I think it's really helpful for you to get in touch. If you are starting your job search, get in touch with a few recruiting companies and find out what they have to offer. Randstad also has a fabulous set of resources on how to get started, building your resume, interview questions, those kinds of things, which are really, really valuable. For research roles, hopefully you'd know both of these, researchcareer.com.au and also researchgate.net. So they'll have exclusively research roles. I haven't included some of the fundamental research roles like CSIRO that suits STEM researchers, but not others. So I've tried to make this as general as possible. What I would suggest, there's a lot of search engines here, so you don't have to search these every week. Set up a profile in each of these and get the website to send you any relevant options. So set up your profile, let them know what you're looking for, and let the jobs come to you that way. So for university roles, uniroles.com and then timeshighereducation.com. Uniroles is exclusive to Australia. Times Higher Education has roles that you can search by region. So you can look in Oceania, the Pacific, in the US, in Europe, and in other places. So for those of you who have the opportunity to travel or to explore in other regions, please have a look at both academic roles and professional roles, because that third space of professional roles at universities is really well set up and very well aware of the skills that HDR candidates and graduates bring to them. I've also included for non-STEM students some of the ethical jobs that are around the values-driven roles that are probably not particularly science or IT related. One is ethicaljobs.com. Another one is NFP, so not-for-profit careers.com. And another one, that's wrong, that's a pro bono. It's pro bono with a P, not a B. I'm an idiot. So probono.com.au. And that's for potentially volunteer roles, potentially contract roles. But from those roles, you'll be able to see who is attracted, what kind of organisations are participating, and then you can look on their own websites for those. And then for IT roles, I've suggested there's some recruitment companies. Most IT roles tend to be data analysis, those kinds of roles do tend to be organised through recruiters. So 3 of the best in this field are Hayes, Hudson, and Hunt & Co. Hunt & Co are a new organisation and the IT senior recruiter, is actually a QUT alumna who I know quite well, and she is amazing. So reach out to any and all of those for some information. I'm going to stop sharing that screen now. Hopefully you've done a few screenshots, or I can post that document into the Q&A for you. But there's some of the places to get started. Kurt, I'm wondering, since I know you were wondering about how to get started, is there a specific question that you've got for me that might not have been answered by, some websites to get you started?
The only other thing I could think of, is there any particular kind of terms we should be searching, what kind of roles they come up as, or anything like that?
Yes, for sure. Kurt, tell me what you're studying at the moment. What's your field?
I'm in engineering, so materials engineering specifically.
Okay. All right. And it's a PhD that you're working towards?
Yep.
Wow. Did an undergrad engineering degree and then you want to do a PhD.
I did a master's already too, so.
My hat is off to you. Oh my goodness. Right. So you are used to time not being your own.
Yep.
Doing very, very long days. So what you don't have time to do is a lot of extra, how do I go and find these searches? The thing that's useful for you, well, for all of you, but specifically you, Kurt, is that in this space, as an HDR candidate, you can span every job category there is. So you can span graduate roles. You are still eligible to apply for many of the grad programs. You will probably be overqualified for those, but that may mean that with some of the programs, they do lots of rotations within different areas. What I would suggest is have a look through some of the grad programs where they don't get you to rotate, because you don't want to rotate in HR or marketing. That's of no interest to you whatsoever, because you have greater specialist knowledge. So what I would suggest is some of the graduate programs that are specific, in your case, to engineering, highlight those. You are welcome to apply. It may mean that you get fast-tracked through, or it may mean that they will take you out of the grad program and go, don't worry about that, Kurt, why don't you apply for this role? So you can skip a lot of the group activities in the first instance. But if there is a grad role that appeals to you, by all means, apply. You will smash it out of the ballpark compared to a lot of the other applicants who will just be coming through their undergraduate program. The skills that you bring would be an incredible advantage. So you can apply for grad roles. You can apply for standard entry roles, which is basically anything that isn't a grad role. You can apply for professional roles, for research roles, and for academic roles. So you're a little bit spoilt for choice, which makes it a really big pot of job opportunities that you can apply for. Sometimes, though, the bigger the pot, the more confusing it gets, right? So you're going, I've got so many options, I just don't know where to start. Where I would suggest is, if you were looking, for example, on a really basic job search site like Indeed or Jora or Seek, what are the normal search terms that you might use?
Usually I just use something with like engineering, entry position, graduate, or anything specific to like something I've done.
Excellent. You didn't mention PhD. Well done. Because searching on your qualification is just a hiding to disappointment, basically. Often they won't categorize roles based on the maximum ideal qualification for you. They may not even be looking for someone with a PhD or who is searching for a PhD because, to be honest, they're a little bit scared of you. They're a little bit intimidated. And that might sound a bit odd to you because you know you're not scary, but no one else does. So in the same way that Melissa said she was intimidated by reaching out to this amazing theatre coordinator in the UK, and she's got this perception of how intimidating they are, recruiters sometimes have that same opinion, that same filter with you. The fact that you're a PhD or about to be. So be aware of the filters that recruiters may have. Recruiters are humans too. And what we just need to do is almost apply knowing that that filter might be there and undoing that filter by the things that you talk about. So things that people might be afraid of with PhD graduates is that, one, you're cleverer than they are. And, you can't help that. There's nothing you can do about that. As a supervisor, I always loved having cleverer people working for me because you know what? They made me look so good. Hopefully everyone has that approach, but what you could do to unpack a potential concern about that is to talk about how eager you are to keep learning. If you've done an undergrad, a master's and a PhD, you think that speaks for itself. Now, to me, it does, but that's because I work in this field and I know it really well. To somebody out there, they're just going, oh, you don't have a lot of work experience, but heck, you've got a lot of study. I don't want you to just come and study your own thing. So ways that you can unpack that is in your applications to talk about how curious you are, how open to new perspectives you are. Open to new perspectives is like a magic wand to a potential manager who's a little bit intimidated that you're more qualified than they are. It's essentially you saying, you can still give me direction and tell me what to do as a supervisor, but then leave me in my cleverness to figure out how best to do it. So in terms of your search terms, I think that's not a bad start. The other thing to do is to use research as a search term, potentially analyst, or investigator, any of those kind of action verbs that accompany research in a professional role. So can I ask you, Kurt, not that I'm only about LinkedIn, although some people might think I am, have you also put that you are open to work on your LinkedIn profile and added 5 search terms for that?
Not yet.
Did you know you could do that?
No.
I love it when people don't know those few things that I know, and then I can show you how to do it. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, for example, I have a portfolio career, so I have several jobs. My main role is this one because it's my favourite, but I do work with other organisations. Because of that, I always have open to recruiters only. So you don't see that green badge on LinkedIn under my profile. So casual observers don't know that I'm looking for work, but recruiters always do. You'll see on my profile in my employment section, 2 of the roles I currently do, I found through LinkedIn, which means that LinkedIn found me. I didn't find those roles. I did not know they were recruiting for those roles. I wasn't following those organisations. But because I had specific search terms, you can add 5 search terms under your what are you looking for. I would suggest for you, at the very least, engineering research would be 2 of those, and then 3 other more specific ones potentially. And then potentially recruiters can reach out to you, because that's the first thing they do when they have a role. They go, who do I already know, or who can I find with those skills? This is the hidden job market. It does exist, and I've been teaching that for years, but I'll be honest, I've never experienced it myself. So it was just, yes, I've heard it's a thing. It's really beautiful now to be able to say it totally is a thing, because I'm working for 2 of them right now. So let recruiters come to you everywhere you are. If you just do a quick LinkedIn Google search on open to recruiters, you'll see that you've got the option to say, I'm available for work. For you folk, I wouldn't suggest that at this point, because you're not looking for a full-time gig right now. You're kind of busy with other study stuff. So you don't want to look unemployed, because that's not you. What you want to do is demonstrate that you're open to work to specific recruiters, and just get on their radar, so that potentially with some of these programs, with Randstad, with Hudson, get on their join their profile, build a profile with them, and then when they have jobs that are relevant for you, they'll come and find you. And I've got to tell you, that is so much faster. It's so much easier, because often you don't even need to write a full application, because they've already got your resume, they've already got your skills, and they'll just give you to the person doing the shortlisting without jumping through all of those extra hoops. So the world is your oyster. You can apply for all kinds of jobs. I would encourage you to keep that as broad as possible. Register, spend a couple of hours one day registering with a bunch of different sites and sorting out the LinkedIn thing, and then making 100 other sites work for you. And then they'll send you the appropriate ones, and then you don't spend your time job searching. Does that help answer that question a little bit?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Terrific. Can I just ask, for those of you listening, can I get you to do a raise your hands if you have 2 documents, one as an academic CV and another as a professional resume? Have you got 2 documents? I'll give you a minute to find where the raise your hand button is. We get one. Okay. Luana, you've got 2 documents, and from the group, you're the only one that has 2 documents. Are you able to unmute and just tell us what the difference is between those?
Oh, hi.
Oh, hello.
Hi. My regular resume has all my work history, like any roles I've had in organizations, and it's pretty like focused on my skills in the workplace, I guess.
Excellent.
And then in terms of my academic CV, that's really focused on, like, I'm an artist, so it's a little bit different as well, but it's really focused on all my kind of achievements to date as an artist. So it reads almost like a portfolio with dates and locations of exhibitions and that kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
So they're kind of almost opposite. Like, one is very much, they wouldn't know particularly what I've done in terms of my arts career, but if they wanted to look into me, they could.
Fantastic. Thank you, Luana. That was really brilliant. I could not have scripted that better. Luana is not a plant, I promise you. I've got another slide to share with you because it sounds like the rest of you only have one document. Now, just to be clear, in Australia, they more or less use the terms interchangeably. Some organisations tend to use resume, some organisations tend to use CV. What I do in the way I explain it, I call them academic CV and professional resume so that you can tell that when I talk about them, I mean different things. So I've got a little slide for you. Let me know if this one gets shared properly. Is that a single screen academic CV or professional resume?
Yeah.
Excellent. So it's nice when a plan comes together. It's a super busy slide. So again, I'm very happy to send this to you. But essentially the differences are for an academic CV, you would emphasize your teaching experience and your research experience, and you need to tailor it a little bit for academic type roles, but not a lot, because their priority is what have you done in the academic sphere? So anything you've done in the academic sphere is relevant, so you don't necessarily have to tailor it. For a professional resume, it's about selling, not describing. So one describes and details, one sells. So it's about how your research and your work skills can add value to that specific organisation. And that's why the whole way through the document, you need to tailor it pretty closely. So for an academic CV, begin with a research hyperlink. So your ORCID profile, your ePrint reference, a UX research portfolio, whatever that may be. With a professional resume, start with your LinkedIn hyperlink. Any professional role or organisation will look you up on LinkedIn before they start. Then, on an academic CV, start with your key skills, maybe HEA fellowships, your scholarships, university service awards, communities of practice, anything like that. For a professional one, then there's your professional summary. Answer 3 questions in that professional summary, maybe just 3 sentences. Who are you? What can you bring? And what are you looking for? In an academic profile for your education, you will list literally everything you've done. This is the whole kitchen sink. In terms of your qualifications with your GPA, your thesis topics, your majors, any major projects you've done, any awards you've done. For your professional resume, the highlights. Basically, what are the qualifications that you've had and anything else that you've done, projects or whatever, that are specific to the role or the organisation that you're looking for. If there are none that are specific to that organisation, leave them out. In an academic CV, then you talk about your relevant employment. You would probably categorise this as relevant employment and then other employment, or you would have teaching roles and other roles, or research roles and other roles. In a professional resume, then you would write your key skills using the core skills that they've asked for in the job ad, transferring those and demonstrating how you can give evidence for those. So quantify those as much as possible. And then in an academic CV, you'd list all your publications. in reverse chronological order, and then you'd separate things into books, peer-reviewed, other journals, those sorts of things. So this is what I mean by the whole kitchen sink. I've seen academic CVs that are over 12 pages. Yours may not be up to 12 pages yet, as you're towards the beginning of your academic career. But if yours goes for 6 pages, don't be concerned. Keep it going because they're interested. So it's everything and anything you've contributed to the world of academia. If you use that document for a professional role, it's unlikely you'll be shortlisted. You are the same human. You have the same skills, but the way you have sold your experience is as an academic, which they're intimidated by or they're confused by because they don't understand what that means or why that's amazing. And you're going to sound less relevant for the role. So for a professional resume, 2.5 pages with your referees, maximum. So academic CV is everything, the whole kit and caboodle. The professional resume is about 2 pages. Everything that they've asked you to address in a job ad, if you're using a job ad, and nothing that they didn't ask for that isn't relevant to the role. So this one, the professional resume, is a cherry pick. This is not your biography. You cherry pick the information that is most relevant for the role that you're applying for, and you don't have to feel like you need to share anything that they didn't ask for. The academic CV is a bit more comprehensive because if you started in one field and that's gravitated you towards another one, if you've done tutoring in legal studies and now you're in sociology, they still want to know about your tutoring role. So you don't have to go, oh, it's not in sociology, I shouldn't have it on there. With this one, they want as much information as you've got that is appropriate. And it doesn't have to be tailored as much. With this one, hugely tailored because this is your sales document, whereas this is more your extended biography. Is that helpful? Let me stop sharing so I can see your faces. It's hard work to start building 2 separate documents, and I know that. What I would encourage you to do is start with one template because one is just a cherry pick of the other. So maybe use your academic CV. You've got everything in there, right? That's your master copy. From that master copy, absolutely, Anita, I will send you that slide. It's a good one, isn't it? It's busy, but it's useful. If you use your academic one as your master, then for a professional CV, just copy across those sections that are relevant. And then you're really only writing one document, but then you're building a second relevant one as you go. It does take a while to set it up, but if you build what you would call it as your master, I have a master resume. I've got a master professional resume. My master resume is 7 pages long. The most I've ever sent is 3 pages of that to any one organisation, but I have different skill sections based on the type of role that I'm applying for. If I'm looking for a coaching or a training or a careers role, I send a specific set of skills. If I'm looking for a program management, administration, team leadership management role, I send them a completely different set of skills. It's the same me, but I just cherry pick my details. How does that fit with everybody? Now, we did have, it was Zara, wasn't it? You had an imposter syndrome scenario. Zara, are you in a position to, sorry, I don't think it was Zara. It was Varsha, wasn't it? Varsha, would you like to unmute and have a quick chat about your scenario? If you can. If you can't, I understand. Looks like it's not the right moment for that. So it's all good. Varsha's question, let me find where it is written on the jobs board. Yes. She says, when I apply for work, I rule myself out for a lot of positions because I don't think I'd be eligible. Sometimes I feel like I'm too critical of myself and maybe losing out on some positions due to my own screening. How closely should I screen jobs for eligibility criteria? It's such a useful question because I'm often asked this, and it's really significant. I don't know if you're aware, there's a really big gender difference. I know gender is a complex conversation, but there is research that says that when a fella looks at a job ad, they'll go, I meet 60% of that criteria. I'll give that a shot because I'm awesome. And off they go and apply for it. These are massive generalizations, of course. That might not be your scenario at all. But generally speaking, a man will look at criteria and say, close enough, I'll give it a shot. What's the worst that can happen? I won't get shortlisted. Ladies, when we look at selection criteria, we'll be really detailed, really specific, and hugely judgmental of ourselves. And we'll say, I only meet 90% of that criteria. I guess I can't apply. Now, you may be on a different side of that gender equation. But if you are the type of person that will be hypercritical of yourself and say, if I don't meet all the criteria, I won't apply, you need to hear this bit, because it's not the selection criteria, it's not a recipe. It's not a recipe for a dessert or, like a pudding or a cake or something like that. If you leave out an ingredient for a cake, you haven't got a proper cake. It won't work. So if it was ingredients for a cake, if you're missing an ingredient, you can't make the cake. This is not a cake recipe that they've applied for. It's kind of like a stir fry. So here are all my favourite ingredients, the ones that I love that will make this as texturally and as tastefully interesting to my palate. So this is a wish list. Selection criteria are a wish list. If I could describe my perfect candidate, they'd have all of these things, I think. They're not even really sure half the time. Now, as long as you've got the fundamentals, you can't have a stir fry. My husband's Chinese. He can't make a stir fry without oyster sauce and garlic, right? So they're his staple ingredients. You start with oyster sauce and garlic and everything else follows from that. So if their essential criteria is oyster sauce and garlic and you haven't got that, you can't make this stir fry. But if you've got most of the others and say, well, I don't have cabbage, but I've got snow peas, close enough, throw it in. See what happens. I'm hoping that this analogy isn't going too far, but sometimes the analogies help. So baking a cake, you need those specific ingredients, and without that, it fails. Most job criteria are stir fries, where as long as you've got the base ingredients to get a flavour profile, then the rest of them, throw in any veggies you've got in your fridge, right? That's how I make stir fry. So if you've got veggies that are useful for this role, absolutely you can apply. Then there's no real formula. If I could tell you a magic formula that says 80% is good enough, it doesn't really work like that. Where some are quite extensive and they say, here are the essential criteria, here are the desired criteria. With that, they basically said that my essentials, my cake, is made from the essentials. So if you've got all of the essentials and a couple of the desirable, absolutely. Address the desirables. If you've got them, say so. If you can get them, say so. If they're easily built because you've built similar skills or you've had similar experience, talk about that and say, I don't have this, but I've got this. Haven't got the cabbage, but I've got your snow peas. But you can't substitute, I don't know, icing sugar for self-raising flour, because it's not the same thing. So essential criteria, ensure you've got that. Everything else is a dream. It's a wish list. Someone with that full wish list may not even exist. Might not even be a proper human. So if no one has everything, who are they going to shortlist? They're going to shortlist the people that applied. So if it's fellas with 60% of their criteria and only a couple of women who've got 90% of those criteria, well, you all might get shortlisted, and hopefully the person meeting more of those criteria would be selected. But you can't be selected if you're not shortlisted. You can't be shortlisted if you haven't applied. So if you're close, apply. This is true for where they ask for a qualification, that you are almost finished, or an accreditation that you are working towards. If you're on the journey to that, let them know in your application when you will be finished. And often that will be plenty because they know you're going to get it. You just haven't got it yet. And half of the time, especially with university appointments, I'll be honest, our HR processes are pretty slow. So it might take 3 to 6 months to actually go through this shortlisting process. Oh, my goodness. So if you're nearly finished something, and you will be finished in 6 months, you might not be appointed until you finished anyway. So it's crazy not to apply. It's hard to be specific answering questions like this when there's no specific job that we're talking about. But I'm hoping that the general tips that I'm providing are useful. Now, we've got a few minutes left. I think I've answered most of the questions. In fact, all of the questions that were on the Padlet. But if anyone's brought a question with them that hasn't been answered, please feel free to raise your hand, unmic, and ask your question now. Does anyone have a follow-up question from anything that I've spoken about? Looks like we're all good. If any of you are interested to exchange LinkedIn profiles with each other, if you haven't already done so, this might be a nice opportunity. to send your LinkedIn profile if you're happy for it to go onto the chat. If not, we can put it on the Padlet as well. Any last comments or questions? You are welcome. Anita. Anita is one of the participants who actually sent her profile to me to ask for some feedback on it. So one of the critical pieces of feedback that I gave to Anita with her profile was to complete an About You section. When you go straight from here's my name to this is my education or something like that, we're never quite sure what your core message is. Who are you? So what I suggested to Anita, and I would recommend to all of you, is to use those 3 questions that I gave you in terms of how to begin with a professional summary for your professional resume. So if you've written them for your resume, again, just copy and paste it into your LinkedIn profile. Don't do more than one set of writing. But who are you? What is your professional identity? What is the identity that you would love to be employed as? And that's more than PhD student, because you are far more than a qualification, even though it's a pretty impressive one. So who are you? One thing that I suggest to people is if you are combining 2 previous identities, so if you've got a past identity and a future identity, find a way to group that under an umbrella term that puts them both together. So for me, I've got training, development, I've got leadership, team leadership, and careers. So I've kind of smooshed that all together and described myself that way. So if you've got teaching and research, if you've got engineering and research, make sure that you come up with an umbrella term that describes the complete you rather than previous you or future you. Describe you, and the fact that it may not even be a thing doesn't matter at all. There is a professor at QUT, and she knows I do this, so I know she won't mind. Her name is Yvonne Miller. She is a fabulous human. Her background is now she's an accidental academic. She didn't intend to join academia, but that's where she is now. So she's come from an opposite perspective where she had a long professional career and now she's an academic. Yvonne describes herself as an expert in design psychology. Now that sounds impressive, doesn't it? Do you know what design psychology is? Yeah, me neither, because it's not a thing. Of itself, it's not a thing. She's not a psychologist, but she's experienced in psychology and the reasons why people are drawn to particular spaces, things like that. And now she works as the director of the School of Design at QUT. So she is into design, she is into psychology. So she describes herself as an expert in design psychology because that is her unique offering. And because it's not a profession in itself, that's where she is able to explain her unique value in the marketplace. So if you have a previous identity and a future identity that you're aspiring to, find a way to group those together and say you're an expert in those so that we get a complete picture of you and you don't have to rewrite your LinkedIn profile after every single job that you've taken. Your LinkedIn profile, the same as your professional identity, sits a long way above that. Feel free to stalk her profile. You can stalk her profile professionally through my profile also. She's a first connection of mine. She's an amazing human that you would learn a lot from. But have a look at the way she describes herself. Find others in your network or who could be in your network who have found a way to articulate who they are above their qualification or even in their current field, so that we get a better picture of who you are. Remember, that's your first point, who you are, what skills you have, so what you can bring is your next sentence. And then what you're looking for is your third sentence, which also helps if you're doing the open to recruiters on LinkedIn. But this is for every resume that you write. Who am I? What can I bring? And what am I looking for? So what will I offer? Well, I hope today's been really helpful for you. It's been fabulous hearing some of your voices and seeing your beautiful faces. So thank you so much for your attention. I'm looking forward to having lots more discussions on the Padlet. I will send you all of the resources that I've referred to today. If there's anything else you need, you can still add to the Q&A. It's all good. Have a fabulous week, and I look forward to chatting with you online. Bye now.